Great. Thank you, Maureen. Okay, so back to the notion of the idea of how might we, or even the question of should we, think about utilizing Clifton Strength Finders for people who have left the workforce. And how might we go about doing that? And what do we need to know in order to do so? Lisa.
Hello. I became interested in this topic because after 30 years working state government career, retired in 2015. I found myself in a role working part-time, but I didn't take my Clifton Strengths assessment till post-retirement. But what I knew is that role of overseeing a leadership development program. I knew I had the feeling of this was the most rewarding career out of my 30 years, but I was able to do that direct connect back to my strengths and be able to see the why. So I continued operating in that. I had the opportunity to go back to the position I retired from during the pandemic. It ended up being 15 months, literally back in the position I retired from. And I became uber aware as what was drawing me back to that role. So I just naturally was focusing on my strengths. And when I separated this last time, recognize I love working with teams. I was able, again, back to the strengths, to be able to find that place, everything that I knew fulfilled me in my career post-retirement. And it's a process, it's a struggle, but the framework's there. And I just feel grateful that I had that awareness. I mean, of course, I wish I had it 30 years ago, but it's definitely working, if that makes sense.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Lisa. Anybody else have a comment or a question or a reaction?
I do. This is Nora Bauman, and I'm in Indianapolis. I retired end of July in 2022, and it was more for personal reasons. My parents were aging. They were both 90, and one needed some care on a regular basis. And at the same time, I recently remarried, and my new husband had 3 granddaughters, teenage granddaughters, that he is the guardian for. So last August, I became a part of the sandwich generation. I don't know if you've heard that, but
oh yeah, sure.
I spend 3 days a week with my folks. And then I spend most of the time with a 14, 16, and 18-year-old granddaughter, figuring out homework and boyfriends and bra shopping. And I had to go back and do my strengths. I hadn't done it since 2002. And I thought, I'm going to do this because this is pulling on some skills and some experience that I have no idea how to handle. Even though I had been in corporate America for close to 40 years as a senior leader in human resources, it's a whole different bandwidth needed when it's personal emotions and personal decisions, and then versus having a handbook and knowing what the policies and procedures are. So I think that there's going to be more people like me who are having a second chance at being a parent and a caregiver. And so I think if people don't know their strengths, that it'd be an ideal discussion so that people can figure out where their well-being lies. And I love the well-being at work book, but I think the well-being in general and knowing how to help yourself stay balanced during the period of change is valuable. And one of my I've had a lot of, I wouldn't say clients, but I call her a client, a non-paying client who just decided to make a big change after having cancer for 2 years and being off of work. And that being able to talk about her strengths and redirect herself was invaluable for her, but also for me. because her life had changed so drastically. And I found that our coaching was something I looked forward to, being able to talk to her about well-being and where she is and where she wants to go now. So anyway, just 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you very much. For those of you who have just joined, we are taking turns having some reaction to this concept, sharing any experiences we've had, thinking out loud about how or if these tools should be used and how they might be used with people who are no longer in the workforce.
Can I jump in for a second, Patricia?
Please. Sure, Marie.
Okay. Just because this might be my strategic talking, but it is number one for me. And the thing is it's not to me, it's not about when they're no longer working, but it's before we into that new curve, that new chapter in our lives. And you know, I've been working with global leaders, usually in their 50s for a while now. So we talk about legacy. So
Right.
I often use strengths, and it's part of the conversation. And then in 2022, Jim Colson did an interview on one of the Called for Coaches about a book called From Strength to Strength. I'll put it in there.
Thank you.
It came out in 2022 by Arthur Brooks, and it talks about the curves and how we become. And I'm not going to quote him exactly, but you know, how to find that happiness and success. I realized at that point, as I had, I was hitting my over the hill, on my next curve. I'm going to be 69 this year. I thought, yeah, I really need to get my strategic in motion here and do things. So, you know, I put my learner interface, I did postgraduate diploma. But so, yes, I think it's essential to look at your strengths because as somebody said earlier, it's how do we shift our mindset to embrace, you know, the new curves, the new chapters.
Right.
That's how I feel.
Right. Thanks, Maureen. That's great. So what I really appreciated about what you said is actually using it before people leave the workplace in order to prepare for leaving. That's a very interesting concept, I think. Yeah. Anybody else? Margaret?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Margaret, we can.
Yeah. Oh, you can. Okay. Well, yeah, I retired in 2020 from a college where I used strengths, and I found a little inroad with the Chamber of Commerce leadership class. So these are young business leaders, and I give them two strengths, once in the beginning when they first get together and one at the end when they graduate. But I really am at a standstill right now. I'd like to do it more with other groups. And so I've often thought that this would be great if we could reach the people that are retiring and then help them feel fulfilled, because I've definitely had a need to be fulfilled after leaving my position.
Thank you. Have any of you been coaching people who are in retirement or have done any training work with organizations that work with people out of the workforce or who are older adults? I haven't, so I'm thinking about that as well. What are the natural connections in terms of organizations and systems that people like us might reach out to and approach?
I mean, they don't offer it. I mean, after a career of state government, which there's no transitional planning or any type of emphasis. So, and I know I've had several. Go ahead.
Jan?
I was just gonna. I've got to figure out how to mute mute myself after I say this one thing, but in Columbia, Missouri, we have an OSHA center, which is for people that are no longer fully employed, and they have classes. And so it might be an opportunity to try to reach those people.
Yes, Jan, we have OSHA out here as well in California, and I don't know how many other states have it, but it's part of the statewide university system. So that's a great idea. Thanks, Jan.
I was going to offer a sort of response to your question. I've been doing a 2-session seminar for people in transition.
Yeah.
And it's been job transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I partner with somebody who is a writer. So we go through the strengths and we go through the domains, and then he helps them craft their resume or LinkedIn profile, et cetera. And as I've been telling people about this, it's like, well, what about other transitions? So transitioning to retirement. And then a friend said, well, I was widowed. I could have used this. How about people who just lost a partner?
Right.
And then another friend said, what about people who have just come out of cancer treatment? So there's just so many uses for, wait a minute, I kind of lost myself at whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
when you quit your job, when you retire, that's a pretty major life change. So, how do we build into this? So that's why I was really pleased that you put out this call for this meeting, so we can kind of talk about that. It's like, what does that look like? What does it look like using strengths to
Thanks.
build a healthy retirement, build with purpose?
Thank you, Beth. That's exciting that people are asking those questions.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat. Patricia, would you like to hear it?
Yes,
I don't know
please.
if you can see it. This is by Susan Chang. How do you aim your strengths towards finding fulfilling purpose in retirement? And how does that translate into setting goals and deciding on the activities you want to be involved in? How can strengths be used with intentionality?
That's great, Susan. And actually, those are, at least the first one was the question I started asking myself after I retired, and realized that even though I had a huge laundry list of things that I wanted to do, there was something missing. And so I went back to my talent themes and immediately recognized that based on how I am, I really needed to do whatever I was going to do with people, because that was really critical for me. I'm still exploring that, and partnering with other people in the process of doing that, I think, can be useful. But those are the questions that I've been asking too.
I'll say that I attended a retirement seminar yesterday, and it was put together by a financial planning company, but it was a retirement coach there. And so she spoke a lot about her clients that she's been working with, and how a lot of these kind of questions don't get asked prior to deciding on retirement. People get very wound up on the financial piece and just making sure they're financially ready to retire, but they don't really think about what are they going to do once they retire, and how are they going to plan their days? What does their sense of purpose looks like, and all of that. A few of us had done our strengths in the room, and so we were talking a little bit about how you can start thinking about how you can set goals with your strengths in mind, and what that might look like in terms of translating your purpose and your activities differently in retirement versus how you're doing it today. So it does open up some interesting conversations.
That's brilliant. That's really brilliant. Thank you, Susan. Other people?
Well, I have a question. What strengths assessment do you think would be most appropriate for people entering retirement? The general one, I'm assuming, a top 34, or I mean, top 10, or what do you think?
Well, honestly, I don't know. To the degree that they're aimed at thinking about people in the workplace, I'm not certain. I know that when new staff in my company would take the assessment, they would mostly always recognize themselves in it. And we had quite a few people who were pretty new to the workforce, you know, entry-level jobs, or people who this was their first big job. So it's a great question, Margaret. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Well, I think the top 34, just going with the full
Yeah.
34 would probably be the best.
Right. Yeah, well, I think it's always the best. It's so amazing to know this whole big profile of everything we have in our toolkit. Yes, I would agree with that for sure.
What we are and what we're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And what drains our energy? I think that's
Now-
the beauty of the 34.
Yeah.
You know,
was
and
waiting
when I
for
was
Ralph.
first thinking about
You try to
retiring,
see when I can say happy birthday to Eleni, but
so anyway,
No.
you know, and they say you should go out and you should volunteer and you should be, well, no, I
I
live
assume
this
so. I
country.
just don't know where that picture came from.
Luann, I think that you need to mute yourself. Anyway, that's the idea of energy. What gives you energy, what drains your energy is important, I think. So hence the 34.
Someone has written into the chat, all 34 get the basic framework, and I don't like using anything less than the 34, regardless of what I'm working on with a client. Yeah. You know,
So
I
then
think
to add on to
Go
add
ahead.
on to that, what are some of the activities that would be appropriate?
say more
And
about,
I'm sorry,
say more about that.
I'm asking the question, what if we're dealing with folks that are going through this life change and they're going to be retired, what are some of the, you get the best of me is maybe appropriate.
Oh, I see.
Looking at the domains, I think would still be helpful, even though you may or may not be part of a team anymore, but it's still, if all of your top 5 are in relationship building, that's a really good thing to know.
Right.
About well, I'm sorry, I don't know who was it speaking to the point of, oh, you should get involved and volunteer.
Right.
Well, maybe not.
Right.
But if you're heavy in relationships, so I'd be curious if people have done any activities or think of any.
That's now I understand what you're talking about, Beth. The activities. Yes, that's very important to think about.
I think it goes down to, and sort of what Susan mentioned, and what are you aiming your strengths towards?
Right.
So I personally am a fan of getting the framework concept of the name it, claim it, aim it, and learning about the balconies and basements and even how you find success. I don't see that changing in my life because it translates to fulfillment. It's just, how do we frame what that looks like? I mean, it's not a financial for me. So I've found a similar jobs that I did in my church volunteering, and it's very rewarding and fulfilling. It's just really about aiming our strengths. So I can see that. I mean, the ideas for how to apply it, or I think is going to be the challenge, right? So finding those opportunities and clarifying that. But I agree that whole how your domains show up in terms of dominance is a great clue.
Maureen, do we have any more chat messages?
No, just Lisa was mentioned. There's one here. I've asked about the 5 elements of well-being, where they are on a 1 to 10 scale. These elements are career, social, financial, physical, community well-being, and that's from the well-being book by Gallup. If everybody knows that, so
Yeah.
that's true to look at those different aspects in a retirement.
Or
frame of
actually
mind.
even come up with different ones. I got a number of years ago, I went through the Happiness Studies Academy, and we had different, same similar concepts, but different groups. And the groupings may be different in retirement, right? Career probably isn't one of them, or may not be one of them. And is there something else we should be substituting?
Or you frame it and change it to work, but
Yeah.
work is paid and unpaid, not necessarily work that you get paid for, but volunteer work. And
Yeah, I think about bucket lists. I think about all of the goals that I have at least put off because I was too busy running a company and growing a family and all the other things that happen in life. And then the question becomes for me, um, how do my strengths apply to some of the things that I have thought about doing after retirement?
So what have you concluded?
Well, the first thing was, thanks for the question. The first thing was that I know I need to be around people.
Yeah.
So some of the things that I set out for myself, such as writing, are pretty solitary activities unless one is involved with writing groups. And so I've gotten myself connected to a writing group, which has helped a lot in that.
Yes, cool.
Yeah. Lifting this up um, kind of to the systems level, we have um, a kind of natural, I call it a container or a natural environment to think about reaching in and working with people or exercising our own talents when we think about the workplace. But many of us get pretty diffused as we leave the workplace. And so how I'm thinking about and not coming up with much of an answer of how do we connect with systems or organizations or society concepts that would allow us to move this idea of utilizing talents after retirement or in many other ways that some of you have described. That's not just about the workplace. And I don't have an answer for that. So if anybody has some ideas, that would be cool. Maureen,
There's a
yeah.
sorry.
Oh, somebody.
There's an author named Richard Leiter. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him, but he's written a lot on purpose and reimagining is one of his books. And he formed a partnership with art. I guess they call it AARP. You're not supposed to say art. And so a colleague and I had reached out to our local AARP office and said, so do you guys ever do seminar? Can we get in and do some seminars or just even neighborhoods or local groups or anything? And they basically said, yeah, if you're not a nonprofit, we can't talk to you.
Really?
Yeah. And apparently Richard Leiter does it for a living. So he was making money. They said there's another arm to AARP that's at the national level and you can talk to them. So that was a little disappointing because I'm not really doing it to make big bucks. I mean, yes, it's a part of my it's a company, but so anyway, that was our only lead and it kind of went, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Christy, we can't hear you quite. If you can turn your volume up or something, we'll be able to better hear you. Were you trying to say something? Oh, no. Okay. Sorry.
To bring the conversation back to activities, there's, I think, two things that I try to use with clients and also with myself, because we are our best coaches, right? But it's first of all doing a narrative of your life, which includes your values and your beliefs, and then from there looking at, in the next step in my life, what do you need? Hey, you need something to learn, you need something to love, and you need something to look forward to.
Yes.
So how do you answer those three questions? And and I think we need to revisit on a regular basis, because we're not doing a 10-year strategic plan, at least not at my age anyway. It's more year to year.
Can you say those again? Learn, live,
Something,
love?
yeah, no, something to learn, something to love, something to look forward to.
Look forward to. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say in the previous conversation that there's an organization called Encore organization,
Uh-huh.
encore.org, I think it is. And they have a couple of things that I think they have questionnaires and they have coaches and they have ideas for people to have an encore career if you want it, or activities, whatever. That's only in the States, and I'm in Europe, so it's a completely different situation here.
Uh-huh.
For me, what happens is a lot of people move to Europe or to another country for many different reasons, but one of them being financial. And what happens is when you relocate, you leave behind all your friends and all the people. And so what you were talking about, Patricia, is you need to be with people. Well, a lot of the people that move have a very difficult time meeting people that either they don't speak the language or they do speak the language, but the culture is very different. So it's a whole sort of different type of coaching when you're talking with somebody, expats.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's in Europe or in Latin America or whatever. And there's much less. Yeah, Beth is putting the thing in. Great, thanks, Beth. I lost my train of thought. It's almost 10 o'clock here and I'm an early bird. So,
Sorry, I
anyway,
didn't mean to do that.
no, that's okay. That's perfect that you put it in. Anyway, so that's why I'm not saying a whole lot, because it's such a different mindset, really, when people move abroad. But I haven't used strengths in a while, and I was talking to somebody yesterday who was the person that referred me to this conversation, and I thought, oh my God, I have to pull all this stuff out because that I know of, people aren't really doing it here, not on the retirement side, but it's a great idea. So
it might really be very useful for people who are expats learning to renegotiate and navigate their new lives in a new place.
well, that's the idea, is how do you get, because what happens is, and particularly I'm in Spain right now, and people come here and they think, oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to get up at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to sit on the beach. I'm going to play golf. And after about a month or 2 months, they're bored to death. They're drinking too much, or whatever. It's just not the kind of retirement that they were hoping to have. So yeah, it's interesting. Or else they're making friends with people who, how do I say this? They're making friends with people that speak the same language, the English, not necessarily the same language, which is the big problem. And so it does help to clarify exactly what your boundaries are, what you want to get out of a friendship, how to keep in touch with the people you left back home. I mean, there's a whole bunch of aspects that we have to touch on. But I don't really know how to use the strengths in all of this. I have to go back and review all of it.
To add to that, Mercedes, I actually do work with expats, not
Oh.
necessarily retired, but global leaders. So I use strengths all the time.
Oh.
That being said, there's also a cultural element that you mentioned, because some of mine are obviously American, and in Europe, because I'm based in Paris,
Yeah.
we wait to, people look forward to retiring. And when I speak to Americans, they're like, so now what am I going to do? I'm going to build a new company. I'm going to open an antique shop. And in France, it's like, I'm going to stop working, even if you've had high-powered jobs. So you might have seen the strikes we had because they raised it from 62 to 64, the retirement age in France. So there is that whole mindset as well. And then, and what do you do with it? And I just can only reconfirm that knowing your strengths, knowing your values helps you find new friendships, find new communities,
Mhm.
and do you need to be surrounded by people, or do you need to be in a writers group or writing alone? You know, this is all about domain, so it's to me very relevant.
Yeah, well, what happens in Europe is that people are less oriented towards the financial side because they have better pensions and you know, I don't know, the government
Healthcare.
takes care of them
Healthcare.
more. Healthcare, also those big issues in the United States. And I think it's one of the reasons that people move, you know, particularly right now is you know, if you can get a residency or a double citizenship or something like that, your retirement really is a lot easier if you don't have huge amounts of money. So yeah, they're very different issues.
Yeah,
But thank you, Marina. I'd love to be in touch with you.
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, please do. I'll connect with you.
So we have about 15 minutes left. And I guess this is rich and very very informative and
I'm
interesting.
listening to something. Just a second.
And I guess the question I have, and I think in part it comes out of my activator natural tendencies, is what are we going to do with it? Or should we do anything with it? I mean, how can we coalesce around this idea, and what do we need to do in order to turn it into something that's practical and applicable? For example, the question I would have is, do we need to accumulate some data and figure out if people who have used their natural talents in the workplace are using them after retirement? Might we need to figure out if there are institutions that are interested in, you know, utilizing this for the health and well-being of the people who participate with them, like Ollie? I don't know. The questions like that might help to figure out what the next thing some of us might want to do. Do we need to write about it? That's another thing.
I think it would be a great idea if we did something collaborative.
Yeah.
You know, an opportunity to share our experiences from all walks of life. And I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my assessment again. I haven't taken it since 2014. And, you know, I think that you always stay within the same domain. But anyway, so that's one thing I'm going to do. But I'm interested in, you know, sharing articles, books, doing something collaborative, because I think that it's, you know, it's a huge topic today. There's more people retiring than in the past, in longer lives, right?
That's
We
great,
don't
Maureen.
necessarily have to work.
I'm really interested if any of you are interested in doing some of the things Maureen just said, like sharing experiences, maybe, you know, talking about some of the ways you are using it or you have questions about it. I've put my personal email in that PowerPoint. I'd be happy to hear from you. And perhaps we could start a conversation that way. Lisa, you had something you wanted to say?
I just did a thumbs up. I'm happy to share. I mean, I would be part of the group. One thing I left, I don't know if the group has saw some of Jennifer Van Zyl wrote with Joe Self, the career success book and the communication, but it's like, okay, what it had was sort of testimonials for people for each strengthening how it could show up with a little spin. It's not too comprehensive, but it may be a framework that could work in this context.
Okay. Can you put the title of that in the chat too, please?
Yeah, I'll send it. She has, I think, 3 books.
Ah, okay.
I'll grab it and then put it in there.
Anyone else have any thoughts or ideas? Well, let me just see by perhaps anybody.
I'm sorry. Where did you say your email is? I'm not seeing it.
Oh,
I've got a broken arm, so I'm trying to type.
okay.
pretty
There
good.
should be a PowerPoint in the chat. And if the first page of the PowerPoint has my personal email address in it, I can just give it to you. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, yeah, I don't see it in the chat.
Okay.
But I have having input number 4, strategic number 1, futuristic number 3. I have and achiever number 2. I have lots of things going on in my head. So what I'll do in tons of different resources and thinking about how they might help. So I'll look through what I have and forward what I think might be appropriate.
Great. I can start anybody who responds to my email if you like, because I can't see us having long, deep conversations about this stuff on Facebook. But if you're interested in continuing to be in touch about this and share some ideas and resources and collaborate about it, I'll put together a roster of emails of people who want to do that and forward it to everybody on the list. Okay. Claire, do you have your hand up?
No, it's just broken.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay.
But I can't see the PowerPoint presentation though in the.
That's weird.
It's all the way at the top. Scroll all the way up in the chat box. And it says Facebook meeting. If everybody wants to put their personal emails or whatever email you want in the chat box, we can save the chat and that will make it easier for Patricia.
Yo, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not showing.
Oh, you know why? You might have joined afterwards. Patricia, can you
Oh,
put
I
it
did.
back
I
up?
joined a few minutes late.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll do it
that's
again.
right.
I'd be happy to do it again.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I sent it. So that's a great idea, Maureen. We'll save the chat, and anybody who wants to put their email address in it, we'll try to stay in touch. So also next year, I imagine that Gallup will do another summit. And this might be an opportunity for us to see if we could all meet in person, but also for those of us who are going to go, but also see if we could, invite other people in the community to think about this and see what their interest level is about it as well. Anybody else have any last words or any thing that pops into their heads?
I'm trying to put my email and webpage on there, but it's only going to you, Patricia. I don't know.
Oh, there is a thing where
it to everybody.
It should go to everybody.
But I'm going. Meeting group chat. Okay,
Click
now
on
I got
meeting
it.
group chat.
You got it?
Now I got it. I was looking for everyone.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll put it in there again. Okay.
Okay, great.
All right, great.
All right. Well, I'm all about ending meetings early, grabbing a few extra minutes with time. So I, again, want to thank you all for taking the time to meet today. I'm excited. I'm not quite sure where it'll go, but I've really appreciated talking with all of you, and I've already got some ideas stirring in the back of my brain. So thank you. Thank you all for being here, and I'm looking forward to hearing from many of you. Take care.
Wait, one more thing.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Mercedes.
How do we save the chat?
3 dots on the bottom. At the end of the chat, you have a pencil, you have a square, you have a file, you have a smile, and you have 3 dots.
Yes.
Click
Oh,
on the
yeah.
3 dots, save chat. And there you
Okay.
have it. When she shuts us off, you'll have it.
Great.
Okay?
Have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking that question, Mercedes. I appreciate it. All right then.
Yeah.
Take care,
I'm
everybody.
gonna leave you. It's late here in Paris too. And I've
Yeah,
got
be
COVID.
well.
So good night, everybody.
Be
well.
Be well.
Bye.
So.
Bye.